THA Talks, for free thought and open minds.
And for freedom of speech.
Hello, I'm Paul Obatelli and welcome to another edition of THA Talks, the alternative podcast show from the UK. Our talks include news, conspiracy, spirituality, the occult, science, history, art, philosophy, religion and much more. If you'd like to check out our full archive, just go to www.thatalks.com to listen to or to download all our free content. And if there's anyone who'd like to contact us and give us some feedback, maybe you'd like to recommend a guest for the show, you can email us info@thatalks.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to the show via our RSS feed, and you can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and many other podcast directories out there. Well, hello everyone, thanks for tuning in again. We've got John White back on the show with us, and you guessed it, we're going to be talking about Brexit. He'll be with us very soon. To sum up what's going on at the moment, I went to the rally in London on Friday. Thousands and thousands of people there. It was a great atmosphere, lots of patriots, really passionate, and the feeling was one of disappointment that we weren't actually celebrating that we were leaving the European Union, but one that there's a lot of exposing of our government going on. I think people are just really starting to see how corrupt the government really are at the moment, and that's almost like a positive thing, because change is now looking like that's the direction we're going in. It's I think people are waking up to the things that need to happen for change to happen. And of course it's not going to be easy, but it's a strange feeling. It's kind of like almost like a feeling of intimidation and disappointment with clarity and a kind of a togetherness that I don't think people are going to let this go. They're not going to give up. But 3 years ago we voted to leave the European Union, and I think especially from those across the pond and not in the UK who may not totally know what's going on, in a nutshell, what we're seeing is our government and our opposition government, basically all of the MPs in our Houses of Parliament, or most of them, are basically trying to stop Brexit and ignore the referendum result and create any propaganda and excuse to reject it as they can. But they also don't want to lose their seats. They still want to remain an MP, and there's so many people that will reject them with them behaving this way. It's made for a very intriguing situation, and then, to be quite frank, it's quite embarrassing as well. I think a lot of people are finding it at the moment. But we've got John White back with us today, and this is going to be the hot topic we're going to be discussing today. And of course, John White always makes it that little bit more spicy. How are you doing, John?
Hello, Paul. I am here and I bring the people's Brexit. Let's have a damn good talk about this mess tonight, eh?
Oh yeah.
How is everybody?
Well, I was just saying it. I went to the rally on Friday. Great atmosphere, and
great.
It's just a shame. It's just so difficult at the moment to point out what's going on, where we're going to go, what's going to happen. I think it's safe to say that it feels like they've been planning to make it a chaotic end to a derailment of what we voted for, isn't it? That's what it seems like these politicians have been.
I think right now one thing which has become very clear is just how much we are living in a fake news fugazi.
Yeah.
Where the ordinary people are simply not represented in the media, and when they are, they're demonized as horrible caricatures.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'm sure of, you've been at the meets, you've been in London the last few days, and what you will have found with the people actually going out there and standing up for what they believe in is you will have found that they're nothing like what the BBC and Channel 4 says they are.
No.
And from the John Sweeney comments caught by Tommy Robinson with Panodrama last month, To Jon Snow, and he's never seen so many white people comment on Friday night. The snobbery and the bigotry and the demeaning attitude towards a majority of people in this country has never been more apparent than it is right now.
Mm. Oh yeah, it's I think it's actually quite scary because they're relentless with it, and it's like, I mean, I've just received a 7-day ban off Facebook for linking a Tommy Robinson video, so you can't even link a video anymore.
How dare you?
Oh,
you absolute fought criminal.
And they're obviously losing, because otherwise they wouldn't be doing this. They don't want people to listen because they know we're right.
Laws like Article 13, wouldn't they, Paul?
Yeah.
Which they have just done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, what we've been doing for the last many years is directly under threat if we continue to stay in the European Union. That's a fact.
Mm. Yeah.
So it does come to a point where it gets serious, and that's what now everybody is now feeling. I think perhaps activists, people like you and me, we feel that more keenly on an ongoing basis, but the general public starts to realise that
I think there's two things.
Really online.
Absolutely. I think there's two things that I've noticed recently when having discussions with Remainers and Ramonas out there, basically. And it's basically that, one, when we're talking about the EU, we're not only talking about how things are now or how things have been over the last 5 years, we're talking about the direction it's going in very clearly.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. And secondly, I think it's not just about... I've just forgotten what it was. The second thing I'm going to go. It's just completely slipped from my mind. There you go, brain freeze. Yeah, you crack on with that one, and I'll come back.
The direction it's going in. I mean, even back in 2016, we had to force the official Leave campaign to start talking about immigration. We didn't want to talk about it at first.
Yeah.
And that was just the bubbling tip of the iceberg issue. With what the EU is now doing to clamp down on freedom of speech, it makes communist China blush in shame.
Absolutely.
It's horrific what they're planning to do. The threat to the very principles of a free society, free as long as you think like we want you to. That's the freedom that the EU is celebrating.
That's right.
And it's another Stalinist dawn if these people get their way. And
it's just come back to me. And the second thing, I've had a busy week, so go easy on me. Basically it's our government. Just because we're opposing the EU, it doesn't mean we're celebrating our government. Opposing the EU isn't about that. It's just basically let's deal with one beast. We don't want to.
I really would like to talk about that, actually, Paul, because I think this is one of people's strongest reasons for backing Remain, is they say, oh, but the EU gives us this and this and this. And the implied inference there is that they don't believe they're capable of getting it out of the British establishment, so they need to keep backing the European establishment to have progressive laws.
Yeah.
But the truth is, our nation has been neglected culturally and politically with important progress, such as proportional representation, held back by that very European Union effect. And of course, little parties then went to the EU to start to get power and influence. And, by having MEPs, the Green Party now has people in the House of Lords.
Yeah.
And you can say that about a number of other small parties. UKIP, of course, also included in that. So there's been a very end-running subversive effect about the EU and resistance to the EU that really has isolated Westminster. And what we are now finding is that since Theresa May got on her knees and surrendered to the European Council and said, get me out of this mess, the EU has asserted the primacy of its law in order to impose this new April the 12th date. Whereas we don't hear anything about that. This is justifying the whole reason we needed Brexit in the first place. It's not a lie, people. We don't have sovereignty while we're in the EU. It's been hidden, but now we've exposed that. And this is not the time to give up. This is the time to push and push hard, because they are not as set in their minds as they might like to appear to with the united front that the media tries to put on EU affairs. The truth is rather different.
Well, I think what we're seeing as well is people just keep going on about the vote, the referendum, and a second referendum. The bottom line is, even if I don't know, I still think there's a huge support for Brexit. But even if they done it again and they lost, I don't know, 45% said no, 45% of your electorate opposing a new union that is continually escalating and progressing in its ideas is a disaster waiting to happen. The whole nation needs to be behind it.
They laughed at that, didn't they? They said, "Oh, that's a dangerous fantasy." Is it hell? Yeah. And who's the EU going to fight with it? Well, I think it might be Russia.
You need the whole nation behind it, not just half of it. We're talking about completely a new direction, and they just acting as if even if half of them, just under half, doesn't want it, then that's okay. We'll still do it anyway.
Even worse than the EU army is the unified taxation policy. Bang goes your national tax policy. That's the EU with its hand right in your wage packet, and it's a short distance away if we don't get out of it. Yeah. As is being forced into the euro, of course.
Yeah. It's all there. Yeah, and I think my only fear with the second referendum, and this is why, although some people think this is quite stupid, there is some sort of method to the madness. That if they do force a second referendum with the option of remaining in it again, which I can't fathom why they do that, but if they did, it may be even worth boycotting it, because if enough people just ignore it and the votes are so low, then when it's not giving them our will. If it's a corrupt campaign and they vote for us to remain, it's almost like our will to let them do what they want with us.
I can see where you're coming from, but it's potentially a very sticky route.
It would have to be a really genuine big boycott, not a little. It would have to be a lot of Farage, everyone behind it, and say no. We're not.
First and foremost, Paul, my response is bollocks to a second referendum, and I've never believed in it. So the very idea is a nonsense, because to have a second referendum is Parliament turning around and saying we've been utterly bumbly useless for 3 years. We can't decide anything. We know what you said last time, but can we ask you again, because we're not really sure we understood? Are you having a laugh?
Yeah. So
you've got the very principle of that in the first place. But my major concerns with a second referendum, should we have one forced on us, would be the actual question. Because if it's a split question, do you want proper Brexit or the fake EU Theresa May deal or remain? Yeah, that's a biased question. It's very easy for Remain to get 33% in that poll.
Yeah.
So screw that.
Yeah, that's
so it. No, we can't agree to that. That's not agreeable. If we're having a second referendum, it has to be an exact rerun of the first question. That's my response to that. As what is the point of it? If you're going to ask if you ask a different question, it's not a second referendum; it's a different referendum.
Well, this is
that's going to be a very difficult argument to win socially because of the extreme bias in the media.
I'd say,
nevertheless, that is my initial response.
Yeah, if there definitely was going to be one, I think that if I was asked, if it was up to me and they said you decide, I would say leave WTO out, and then with the option of obviously negotiating a deal as and when the EU want to do one with us. And then the other option would be to have them delay so that we can continue to work a deal. There shouldn't be an option to remain. It should just be either leave now and get on with it, or
that's 2
years
not
delay.
What in mind, Paul. I mean, if there wasn't going to be an option on remain, they wouldn't be pushing for a second referendum now, would they?
Absolutely.
But the further problems with the second referendum are, how are we going to get equal airtime? How are we going to get equal spending? The last time was a disaster. We've had foreign money pissing into the country, backing up all this Remain malarkey, whipping up division, whipping up hate. Hate against Indigenous Britons for believing in self-determination, freedom and democracy, coming from people whose surnames, like Soros.
I think that's had a reverse effect.
All the rest of them. How the heck is that ever going to be a fair referendum debate? Then we've got the problems with the count. Then we've got the problems with who's actually allowed to vote. You know they're going to want 16-year-olds. They probably want EU citizens voting in it this time.
That's right, yeah.
It's a complete non-starter, and I think it's time to put our foot down on this nonsense, to be honest, because that is a coward's choice. If the MP is abdicating because they're totally unfit to do anything. I mean, this is what's got my goat for the last 2 or 3 months, really, Paul, is that I cannot understand these MPs. If they are for Remain, they should have voted for the withdrawal agreement deal because it's the best way to keep us close to the European Union as opposed to no deal. Instead, they've managed to create a situation where it's the EU itself having to consider kicking us out on the 12th of April. And I want to come to that because that is not an idle possibility.
Well, especially with Salvini and Le Pen sitting back,
absolutely.
they might. I mean, it would be a big ask for them, but they've got the power to do it. I think, haven't they? Some of these people to put a veto in there,
Well, I mean, the EU doesn't necessarily make friends with how it treats people now, does it, Paul?
No. Well, this is
Italy. I mean, look at that poor benighted country. What it's had to put up with.
And Hungary as well, being punished for not taking any of Merkel's guests.
But I think I'm not really pinning my hopes necessarily on one veto from one nation. I think that actually it's in the EU's own vested interests to damn well let us go while the game is good.
Yeah. I mean, they've got
there's a big argument can be made for that.
Well, with the elections coming up, the EU elections, they're going to have not just Farage there, but a whole wave of new Brexiteers.
Merry hell!
Yeah.
And we will be deliberately sending in MEPs this time, not just to get Britain out, but to bring down the whole lot. Control demolition of the very structures of the EU itself. Because if we can't get through by fair democratic means, then we're going to have to try some foul ones, aren't we?
Is it? I mean, I've just had a thought here now. Could it actually be a kind of a plot that's going on underground to actually keep us in eventually, and that will cause such a reaction that we'll send so much more MEPs and their anti-EU MEPs, and they team up with the Italians, the French, the growing wave of anti-EU MEPs, and the plan is there's a plan to take it over. So, okay, you want an EU? We'll have the EU then, but we'll run the show.
If we're held prisoners against our will, if we are enslaved to the yoke of a foreign power, then we are quite entitled to use any or all means, to address that. So some sort of hyper-complicated conspiracy to undermine the EU over decades, well, it might have to go that far. But I'd much rather we had a nice clean break now while it is still there to be won. And we have 12 days.
Yeah. I mean, leaving would be good for the other. We could then extend an olive branch to other nations, but then we come back to the same old thing. At the end of the day, we've got a government that's, even if we leave, are going to bend over backwards and do whatever the EU says.
The arguments that there are any issues caused by a hard Brexit which are insoluble is just a nonsense. In fact, just at the weekend, Donald Tusk put his fat mouth in it because he admitted there would be no border in a hard Brexit situation, talking about Northern Ireland. Because the fact is, but unless it's trade going in and out further into the EU from Ireland, there's no need for bloody check it anyway.
Yeah,
a lot of this is absolute panic. And the idea that people are going to have a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland when they don't want one is just ridiculous.
That's right.
So, that's always been a nonsense. A hard Brexit will solve the issues quickly because of market pragmatism. At the moment, it's the politicians who are failing, and it's the politicians who are in the way. And as far as the British politicians are concerned, they are all now irrelevant. It's the EU that matters, and it's the EU we need to bring pressure against.
Yeah, that's right. That's how this has come, isn't it? That we're literally hoping that the EU are fed up with us and say, "Let just go," and we say thank you. Our
Well,
politicians
you know
will do
me,
it.
Paul. I believe in incentivising. Yes, I do entertain the hope, but I like certainty a lot better than hope.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, hope is at best cold porridge for your breakfast. You know, I like a hearty fry up. You know, so you know, I believe in pushing the EU, and of course that is what I have been part of doing, is creating a new campaign to do just that.
Well, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about not giving up. I hear from so many people, "Oh, I'm so tired of hearing about it and this and that." I know exactly where they're coming from, but at the same time, sorry, this is a battle, and we've got to stick it out. We've got to stand our ground.
We could be as tired as we like. We've lost our freedom.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we could feel as much in as we care to. You know, going around lives where we've lost the ability to fundamentally change the situation we're forced to live in.
Well, once the EU starts putting legislation on how we wipe our backside, then I think they might start regretting it. You know,
What we speak and what we think, and what we can do. We are way too far down that road. And while the world is turning towards freedom, and while there is worldwide movements for to make Earth great again, and while where we go one, we go all, we still have to deal with the issues right here in front of us, right now in the United Kingdom. And that means that we have to push now. We have to push hard. And Brexiteers have been patient and have been tolerant. But one of the things which is really stands out here, Paul, is that we have been patient, we have been tolerant, and then at the very last minute they whipped away the rules upon which they had gained that patience and tolerance from us.
That's right,
and betrayed us.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have to respond to that, but it's also the trap of being incited by this, you know, to becoming some sort of radicalised mob that they can easily target and demonise.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, look at what's happening in the EU at the moment. I mean, the French government, for heaven's sake, you know, it's actually used chemical weapons on its own people, Paul.
Right, but yeah, I've seen some.
I mean, these experimental tear gas deployment system, which deploys tear gas, super strong tear gas, in a 200-meter square kind of a 200-meter kind of area.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people, when they see the footage with the yellow dress, they think, "Oh, they're violent. Look what they've done, cars burning and this and that." And I'm sure to some extent there has been some naughty behaviour, but if I'm not mistaken, it didn't start violent. It was a protest that was turned violent because of how the police were reacting to them.
French police has had a habit of stalking any leaders of the yellow vests, going right up to them and firing tear gas grenades right in their face.
Yeah. So it was provoked.
I mean, it's hardly been pleasant. What are they now? About week 14?
Yeah. It was basically,
it's starting to get seriously embarrassing to Macron.
Well, for the French, the general election can't come quick enough, can it? And this is what happens when you buy in the propaganda.
3 years, according to their constitution.
Yeah, it's what happens when you buy into the propaganda that if you vote for this person, you're a Nazi or you're a racist, and for people feel intimidated for supporting those kind of groups.
Look,
and this is what happens.
I will never believe that was a straight election that put that little popped up Popinjay in power.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure corruption.
I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it in America we've seen it in America with Trump. That you've had these people that have just. What was that lady? I think it was in Florida. She had to resign because she was blatantly trying to rig the vote and trying to find votes that weren't there. And
there's loads of that going on, but you know, I mean, that's another situation. I mean, the America's doing quite well at the moment. Yeah. You know, post Mueller report, but to keep the focus on Brexit. Well, shall I go on and talk about what I've been up to since Friday?
Please. I mean, so obviously we're encouraging people not to give up and to stand their ground. Right. You know, keep your heads on your shoulders, keep diplomatic, but keep working hard. And of course, Aslan's army is doing just that. So let's hear about it.
Well, Aslan's army, yes, we have founded a whole new campaign. It's called The People's Brexit. And we went live at 2300 on Friday the 29th. So when it was absolutely clear that the British government was not going to deliver Brexit by any way, the clock had expired on the deadline they set with us, we've initiated this campaign. Now, the first thing is that there is a change.org link. Now, yes, it's a petition, but no, it's not a petition. It's a notice. So we're not getting on our knees and begging the EU to please nicely do something for us, like people normally do with a petition. We are using the change.org mechanism to put our signatures to a declaration, a notice.
Yeah.
And we are noticing the EU of one very important fundamental fact above all others. We are not their citizens. We refuse, we revoke, we do not consent, we do not comply. So we're serving notice on the EU, but we are instigating the people's Brexit now. And on that basis, we're then going forwards, and with the short-term objective being the window of opportunity that we might get the EU to kick us out, we are pushing the EU hard to do just that. And getting at the key people, doing open letters to be mass tweeted to the individuals concerned, on top of the change.org link. And in the petition itself, there's a set of instructions. There's a whole list of Twitter accounts to tweet the petition to. So if everybody who signs it also tweets it to 20 different important people, we will gain a huge amount of organic reach very quickly. And we could have a 2-week campaign that could make an impact and at least push back on these other petitions, like the Remain one, which was such a total fake. It was at least 80% foreign bots.
That's it. Well, I put it to the test because there was one that I'd already signed, and I just put some different names with a different email address on it, and it went through, and I'm like, oh. And I've done, I even asked some of my relatives, can I sign you? I did on a different email, and they said, yeah, and there you go. So
I also want to point out, is gloves off here. We are not playing nicely now. This is straight in the face stuff. And when you read the text of a petition, you'll see exactly what I mean. It's the right side of not being vexatious or frivolous, but it's certainly very strong. So it's putting it right to them straight, and it tells them quite a few home truths as well.
Yeah.
So, any Brexiteer will love that petition. But it's not just British people. Patriots around the world can serve notice that they are not EU citizens either. And we aren't playing pretty. So we just want as much support from wherever we can get it before April 12th to see if we can actually get this thing over the line while there's still an open window.
And of course, I think I'm correct in saying when you're saying you're not EU citizens, it certainly doesn't mean you're not saying you're not European people, because it's not
the same thing at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some people get confused.
The European Union is an unlawful legal fiction.
Yeah. Yeah, we're always Europeans.
European people are the people of genetic birthright, heritage of growing up on the European continent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and come on, Paul. We all know most of Europe isn't even in the EU.
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
So let's get back. Let's get this empire's expansive tendencies in the proper perspective.
Yeah.
If it had stayed as a trade club for Germany and countries which border it, it would have worked out pretty well. But as it is, it's become a monster, and it's just not working for anyone. So as soon as we get some sort of reality, and we can get back to a Europe of friendly trading nations, the better.
Yeah, it just seems they're exposing themselves in how they're just not. They just refuse to accept. Look at all the nations that are not happy with what they're doing. The time for them to say, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to do this and have a reform, and they just won't do it. That moment's passed by so many times now, and they just come across as these sort of mad scientists of this crazed idea that even if people were dying by the millions, you'd still see them carrying on. They will not change. That's how it looks. Look,
Paul, freedom is under threat. Our voices are under threat. Our democracy is under threat. And we face dictatorship.
Yeah. Very close now. Very close, yeah.
Vote to stick. If we cannot get that vote to stick, then we have lost effective democracy.
Yeah.
So it's all on the line right now, and this is not the time to give up. This is absolutely the time to redouble, treble, quadruple our efforts.
Yeah.
To actually go for it with a gusto we've never done before. Like it's the last few days of the 2016 campaign again.
Yeah.
This is the time to go nuts, pushing to get this hard Brexit through. Otherwise, we're going to have a whole long, dreary old future of 3, 4, 5 years of being enmeshed in something that ultimately will just end in pathetic failure, and all we will have is the failure of our political class to listen to us, the failure of us to hold them accountable, and the EU falling apart under its own stupidity anyway.
And
that will not be good for our sense of national self-esteem.
And obviously a mass execution of actually, just to reassert, I'm not calling that literal execution, but of MPs losing their seats big time in the next.
Electorally executed at the ballot box. That's the best we can do. I suppose we'll have to settle for it, Paul.
That will happen. I think that's going to happen to a degree anyway. By the time I think there's so many people who are sick to death of them. I really do.
The general election cannot be prevented.
Yeah.
That could be a question of what kind of country are we going to try to shape with our votes. Also, for what it's worth, Paul, I think that a new general election will fail in that it won't produce a clear government until we have proportional representation. And I would go further and say until we have an English assembly, we cannot solve the fundamental problems within our union.
Yeah, I do think. I think people are hungry for that now. It just seems to be the only time you ever hear the word England is if you're watching the cricket or football, and that's about it, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I think if we could do that, we could show that we are serious about reform, that we are serious about becoming the modern nation, because the actual structures of the United Kingdom are 50 years plus obsolete. We urgently need national reformation. And I don't think that the next Parliament we elect is going to give it to us, but we must push on so that the one after it certainly will. And at the times like these, I believe that organisations and pressure groups are very important, just as important as political parties, and there's really no reason not to support both. On that basis, it really doesn't matter who you vote for. There's nothing to stop you signing the People's Brexit petition and sticking it to the EU now, because we need you.
Yeah. And
if we can get this seriously rocking, we're coming up to around 250 signatures within the first 48 hours. That is on par to potentially, if we go viral, we could get into the tens of thousands before the 12th.
Yeah.
And we are starting to get tweeted and noticed by good people. But obviously, I am directly calling out tonight to every THA listener, and I'm sure Paul will be good enough to put the link to the petition in his podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd like to follow up at this point, Paul, because I also wrote to Jean-Claude Juncker today.
Right. Okay.
And because we're doing open letters to key people, I wondered if I'll quickly do a narration of that.
Absolutely.
Get a flavour of what we've got going across. So the People's Brexit open letter to Jean-Claude Juncker at Juncker EU. Dear President Juncker, in brackets that is, we do not recognise the governance of the EU and have served you notice. A reminder to read the petition here, but this is not the only reason we are writing. Your comments, as reported in the UK press, reach our ears in this Express article link. Please allow us to express a measure of sympathy with you. Our British politicians are useless. We hear the plaintive appeal within the frustration in your voice when you ask if we could please, pretty please, make up our minds about something before you are forced to cut us off. A dysfunctional limb threatening the stability of the EU's whole body politic. We are Brexiteers, you see, and unlike the docile Remainers, we pay attention, comprehend and understand the EU. Now we might say the EU would have hell trouble passing anything else than kicking us out at this point anyway. Just one veto. Whoopsie. We sure hope so. But we believe in added incentive. As a thought exercise, if we were you, we would definitely say, get rid of those Brits while the going is good, so we can focus on making good the rest of Europe's problems. Can you imagine if we, the free British people, are forced by our venal political classes' failure to follow the clear instruction to leave the EU, to return fresh MEPs to the EU Parliament? Sir, if the Sea Kraken will not willingly let us go free, what recourse could the crew of Britannia have than to cut the crushing tentacles loose by more desperate means? You know the trouble we will cause. Think of the market instability, the paralysed administrative processes, the wrecking amendments and sheer bloody-minded belligerence, bringing the EU to a standstill. We know our elected representatives will do their best. Here is your chance to at least be remembered well as the man who did the right thing when it really counted and to solve all of our problems. Kick out the UK, your no deal, hard Brexit on April 12th. Ignore whatever those useless failures in Westminster dicker over this week. Even if they could squeak some sort of marginal majority for some course of action, like a customs union, we're going to boot them all out electorally for daring to block 29th of March. A general election now cannot be avoided, so damaged is the useless Theresa May Day. And those remaining MPs cannot hide from the voters' fury over broken promises made just 2 years ago. The patience of the British people to return self-government is at an end. So there is no deal they can offer you can trust, and even worse than that, if they manage to unify over the cowardice of holding a second referendum, Leave would then slaughter them at the ballot box, not least because of how you lot have behaved since June the 23rd, 2016. Still, we are not going over all of that right now. We just want you to hear our simple message. We are the people's Brexit. Hear us. Ignore the fools in Westminster. Do yourself a massive favour and kick Britain out. April 12th. Make the right choice. End this. With regards from all at the People's Brexit campaign. So, there you go, Paul. What do you make of that?
Well, that was very, very, very well written. And I have to say, it did make me think, listening to that and thinking about the reality of perhaps the EU doing just that. It's kind of got, it wouldn't surprise me, because one thing about this country and our elite, and particularly our media, they hate it when the British feel patriotic. They always want to put their pride down. They hate it.
They are so unpatriotic.
Yeah, themselves. Absolutely. And I think they would actually prefer, it's kind of, well, at least they'll kick us out. At least we go out with something like a negative rejection. Oh, we've got chaos and they've just kicked us out, rather than us vote and roar and walk out the door. You know, they don't like that. So they'd prefer it if we got kicked out of that. Let's
put it this way, Paul. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Not all Remain voters are anti-patriots, but all anti-patriots voted Remain.
Absolutely. Yeah. Totally. And that's very true. You know.
We don't hear it put that way around very
not
often.
Everyone, not all Remainers hate Britain, but all people that hate Britain voted Remain.
Remain, yeah. It is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is. So, you know, we are standing up for who we are. We're standing up for our essential values, our essential rights, our essential freedoms, our essential self-determination, and simply that we just aren't going to be enslaved by this nonsense.
No, yeah, it's very well written, and I think we need to get lots of people campaigning, doing what you're doing, and hopefully some people listening to this. Obviously, there'll be Remainers.
Hashtag no spaces. Hashtag the People's Brexit. Right now on Twitter and Facebook, they will find an orgy of material because the campaign has been pumping it out. and we're good to go. We're running. We're stoking our engines. We've got our boilers up here, Paul. Chugga, go for it.
Yeah.
Because this is really his time to do it. I can but hope that this conversation will reach ears in time to inspire them to just muck in right now and get involved.
Well, of course, as we speak now, our incompetent government and MPs, most of them, are actually debating 4 options of what we're going to do. So
all the main options as well.
Yeah,
of course. Any sign on any results on that? Because we've about just gone past 9 o'clock. We're due out with results, aren't we?
I haven't actually. I'll look as we're speaking now.
We'll have a little quick look, just see if there's a THA live update coming your way.
Have voted on the possible. I think we're not getting the votes, and they voted on a possible next steps for Brexit as they try to break the deadlock in Parliament. What deadlock?
Yeah. It's simply them.
There's no deadlock.
Choosing to do as they're told.
Yeah.
That's the only deadlock there is. It's a deadlock in their brains. But it's just too much to expect, to cut their own troughs out of a gravy train, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now, and it just seems there. I think they've. It's 9:05 now, and it looks like they've cast their votes, if I'm not mistaken, and they're just now debating, and as they probably counting the votes and so on. But it's who knows, eh?
Well, there's a lot of good stuff going on right now, and in all seriousness, there are credible legal challenges and all sorts of things being mounted. The very veracity of what Theresa May did by handing over control of the Brexit process to the EU like that, without which is supposed to have gone back to Parliament, because wasn't that what good old Gina Miller managed to prove with Soros's money? So it's a farce, there is no legitimate process. They're making it up as they go along. They're just trying to find some way out of this.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking now as well. David Davis has made an interesting point. He's tweeted, MPs were denied the right to vote for a full WTO Brexit on the ballot paper tonight. It was the choice between soft Brexit, no Brexit, or holding another referendum to get a different answer. So much for democratic innovation of indicative votes.
Yeah, I mean, so much for Westminster, so much for them. Who are these people anyway?
Yeah.
It's a long time. It's a long time since it was the chamber of Britain's best and brightest. These people are the system servers. These people do degrees in politics and economics and go straight into the party system. They're getting parachuted in. And when it comes to making their own decisions, they really are so ignorant. It's horrifying. Because this is one of the worst things about Remainers, Paul. I'm going to have a little rant here. But I look at the EU. I study the EU. I understand the EU's perspectives. I understand how much there are powerful factions inside the EU that don't want to let Britain remain at any cost, because they're hoping that Britain leaving will create a shift in the power structure that will give them more say. And they're not going to let that go. But so often, with how Remainers view the EU, it's so condescending. It's so up its own bum. It's so snobbish.
Well, they don't think that it's going to change. They don't. It's almost like they don't see what's changing, and I think Brexiteers can just see the change, and they're thinking, no, we don't want more of this. Whereas the Remainers don't seem to see it, unless they're just ignoring it.
When was the last time you saw a British Remain voter celebrating the freedom to work around Europe that the EU gives them?
Yeah.
They're not interested in that. Yeah. No, they want cheap labour to come here and make their coffee and wipe their elderly parents' bottoms for them.
Yeah, it's imperial, isn't it?
But they don't want to go and have to do those things. If you suggested to them that they might have to go and work in the EU, learn second or third languages, they're horrified by the very notion. They are the worst Little Englanders.
Yeah.
Because they're the Little Englanders who think they're the trendy hip set, and they're not.
No, it's
very close-minded, bigoted people.
Yeah.
And we see it when the mask slips like it did with Jon Snow on Friday night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. As if he was shocked that there was a lot of white people in Britain. Fancy that, eh?
Or you've got the kids are frankly brainwashed, or you've got they're going along the career path. They've had their university indoctrination. They're junior and they don't want to rock the boat and they want to look like they get along, or they're a bit more senior and they're getting all the gravy and the cream and we don't want it to stop, you know? So it's the EU is an insidious organisation which has bribed itself support, but in the ultimate irony here, from a class of bigots in the United Kingdom that don't actually understand it.
Yeah.
Isn't that shocking, really?
This is it, the frustrating thing. They keep implying that
And then
Brexiteers
the lies.
don't understand.
Oh, God, the lies.
Yeah, they don't understand.
1 million march in London. Did they hell? We've got professional analysis of that. Full fact analysed that march, Paul, and full fact put it top end 400,000, 320,000 to top end 400,000. But how often has the BBC, ITV, Sky News repeated 1 million, 1 million, 1 million?
That's right.
Even Donald Tusk repeated 1 million, 1 million, 1 million.
Yeah, that's right.
We've had this barrage, this whole campaign, this illusion of lies. But the reality is, if we don't have democracy in this country isn't governable by a British Parliament, let alone the European one.
Yeah.
So someone's got to get real here, because we are running out of manoeuvring space. And we are trying to keep this moving forward as legitimate and lawful democratic campaigning. But the more they try to close off any opposition to them, the more they are building up something terrible. And it has to stop now before it's too late. And right now, it's the members of the European Commission who need to be pressured to make it so.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's we'll see where we go tonight. I guess we'll see something tonight. Whether I mean, if they don't vote for any of these options, then we really are. Well, it's head scratching time.
If they don't vote for any of it, that's actually good for us.
Well, absolutely,
because if they can't agree anything, it's going to be almost impossible for the EU to avoid no deal.
Yeah, so that's what we'll be
I don't know if we're going to be able to continue with that level of luck. Because, of course, they're gaming it. You can just imagine the threats and pressure in the background.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so I reckon that we can't rely on Parliament to hold out. They're weak at the best of times.
Just people, keep an eye on your seat. Whoever's in your constituency, see what they're voting for. Because it's almost like now they're trying to say, well, I had to vote. Because you don't have to vote, do you? Can't you just decide not to vote?
Well, there's no law that says you have to vote.
Yeah, you can actually...
I mean, look, personally, I'm against the principle of not voting because when you don't vote, it doesn't count.
Yeah, but what I mean is because there's no option for a WTO. If you're Brexiteer MP...
If you get into a second referendum nightmare, then, you know, I just don't know at the moment, Paul.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Those choices become quite difficult. But, you know, let's not have a second referendum. There's a winning idea.
Yeah.
Let's not do it.
Wouldn't trust
because
it.
there isn't. You know, if we could get a straight question and a scrupulously fair debate, I'd take it because we'd win it hands down. You know, but with the way Twitter, Facebook, and all the media is, you know, the idea that we should jollily be happy to have a second referendum because the losers aren't happy is a joke, an absolute joke, and no, we can't buckle to it.
It sums up the hypocrisy that's going around at the moment. Like, I think it was someone who was also jailed recently for throwing an egg at Jeremy Corbyn. I seem to remember Nigel Farage getting an egg at the back of his head, didn't he? I
did see another report that said it wasn't an egg; it was a brick. But I'm not sure.
Well,
if it was a brick, it must have missed.
If it was a brick, then that's a slightly different scenario. But I did hear egg.
The old 2 jabs, wasn't he? You know, and his response to an egg was pretty direct.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just double standards. It always is. Like Anna Solberry, you can't even argue with her without her telling you off because she might not be able to get home that night safely.
She's just deranged. That woman is deranged.
Yeah.
I saw her on Parliament, you know, and she was just absolutely twitchy on the alcohol and the stress and everything else. Yeah, absolutely crazy, manic people.
Yeah.
But Remain has been so desperate; it's actually taken these fools and made them into its talismans.
It's taken them 3 years to lie, twist, make up stuff. propaganda. I mean, people forget there was a lot of money that's been put into Remain over the last 3 years. Tony Blair, didn't he get
God, unbelievable.
Yeah. Where's all that money gone? It's gone somewhere. It's doing something,
Yeah, and look at the Electoral Commission is 70% Remainer anyway. Oh,
Yeah.
God, I wonder why that was allowed to happen.
Yeah.
Look, a lot has been made of accusations against the Leave campaign, but even the Electoral Commission admits that it fined them when it gave them the wrong advice before the referendum.
Yeah. Well, the High Court's proved that. It's the High Court.
So they told
Remainers
them wrong
keep saying that we
and
broke the
then
rules. We did
fined
not.
them afterwards.
Yeah.
It's so discredited. It is corrupt. It is corrupt. It is corrupt.
Yeah.
Everything is corrupt about the Remain argument in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
All of it.
It's
And every single one of them is a compromised mouthpiece who has massive amount to lose by us leaving the European Union personally. Their prestige, their influence, but even worse, what if they get found out for their crimes?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's even if we stay now, there's going to be no glory in it. People are still going to be unhappy. People are still going to be campaigning to leave, and the people that did it are going to basically be exposed as completely corrupt and didn't respect the referendum. So it's just
to leave the European Union. We could only see politics moving further towards political extremes.
Yeah. They're
because where is your fair play consensus to unite around?
Yeah.
It's been destroyed.
Yeah.
It's been destroyed. They showed that when it suited them, they decided they knew better than us. So Parliament has wrecked itself. Parliament can't even begin to repair its reputation until the majority of these people are thrown out the building.
Yeah.
There's no getting away. There's no getting around that. Domestically, we are undergoing a revolution. We just need to do our bit as much as we possibly can to keep it a lawful and peaceful one. But they're not making it easy now, are they, Paul?
No, and I think what you're doing is good. Even anyone out there, any little bit you do helps. Even if you're working, you might not want to put your face out there and put yourself out there politically.
Just
Anything you do,
retweet
it. To get out on a forum and debate on something, just get out there and make an effort and just rally the troops. Obviously John's got a campaign going, and that's fantastic. We are at about that time, John. So anything else you'd like to add for that campaign?
Well, we're going to go straight for the basics. I think, Paul, we need to go to the People's Brexit Facebook page, the People's Brexit Facebook group. Get involved in the group chat of the group. The people, the Brexit Peoples. At Brexit Peoples, for People's Brexit on Twitter, and just start getting into this content, give it some help. Whatever else you do, whether you're for UKIP, or for Britain, or for the Tory Party, or whatever kind of Brexiteer you are, if you're a Green Leaver, if you're a Labour Leaver, whatever type of Brexiteer you are, we are not left and right. We are right from wrong, and we want us out of the EU. So give us your support. And thank you, Paul, for your time tonight, as always.
No, thank
you
for coming on again, and I'm sure you'll be back with us again soon.
Aslan's army is also going nowhere at all.
Absolutely, we're going to go and chill out and probably listen to how more embarrassment from our MPs, and next time we'll have lots more to talk about. So thanks.
Whatever they claim to have agreed, if they claim to have agreed anything, God help the EU if they're stupid enough to believe them, because we will not be letting them deliver it.
That's the spirit. Thanks for everyone for tuning in, and thanks again, John. Until next time, we'll be seeing you. Bye.
Bye-bye.